I think to understand the history of the Newcastle Fieldhouse, it's important to understand the history of the IHSA state tournament. Hosting privileges provided some level of home court advantage, and so in an era in the 30s, 40s, 50s in which the IHSA, sold out seemingly every venue for sectionals, regionals, semi-state, state finals, it was important for schools to have the biggest facility possible to be able to host those sectionals and regionals and give their team an advantage. And so Newcastle had the Church Street gym at the time, which seated I think between 2,000 and 2,500. Every year they would have a good team, but they would face Muncie and have to go to Muncie in the tournament to play them in a state tournament setting. And so Newcastle, already being a basketball town, realized the importance of having a bigger facility and a huge facility.
Began really probably 15 or 20 years prior to the groundbreaking. There'd been conversations about building the Fieldhouse for years, and finally in the mid-50s, early to mid-50s, a lay group of business people and professional people in the community got together and said, we're going to get this started separate from the school. The school had decided to build a new facility out here on the south side of town, but they were not going to build a field house or an athletic complex. They just were going to build the school and do the athletic thing later. And incredibly as it sounds in today's world, a separate group of businessmen and individuals got a group of about 50 people together and said, we're going to do this right now and get going on it. And it was called the Newcastle Henry Township Building Corporation, and it was shortened to Jim Now.
The citizens literally took it upon themselves to fundraise, to get every quarter, nickel, dime, dollar they could so that they could build a facility that would then have hosting rights in the sectionals and in the regionals and give the Trojans those perceived advantages in the state tournament.
Over a period of about a year and a half, they set a goal of $200,000 to raise, and they did that by selling shares, $10 shares to individuals, and then having bake sales and car washes and things like that, rummage sales. But they raised about a year and a half by 1956. By the spring of '56, they had raised $200,000, which in today's dollars is $2 million. So they had raised that much money in that short a period of time, and that's basically how it started.
Well, it was kind of a dream position. I can remember back to when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I would come to sectional games, and I'd be crawling around the bleachers. Before I even really was, into basketball, I was here, I knew about it. And then as I got into kind of grade school, it was Newcastle basketball. Those were my heroes. And I just wanted to be around it. I love basketball, I love the game of basketball. When this presented itself about a decade ago, I was all in, because if there was a way to be back in the program, if there's a way to give back to the community, that's what I was about.
It's just stepping into this fabulous facility and seeing all the banners and the history that exudes from this great venue. Of course, it's not only known in the state of Indiana, but the whole United States and even the world now.
First memory I had of walking in the field house was basically the summer before I started my first year, and there was an open gym down there, and I was watching Brandon Miller and Darnell Archie and other players play, and could tell even from a summer league game or summertime game, basically they're playing against each other, that they meant business here. And then when we had our first day of practice, the newspaper spent the whole day watching our practice and reporting on it. So I knew we were a part of something important.
Just being in the field house, turning the lights on at the field house, and you've got the largest and finest field house as your playground, and nobody else is in there but you. Those are the memories I probably remember the most, because it might have been 10 practices in, it might have been 20 workouts in, but there was always improvement that was going on because I had a playground like that, and those are the memories I probably remember the most.
My greatest memory of playing here in the field house was my very first time of playing as a freshman on the varsity team, and coming out of the tunnel, running out of the tunnel with the team, and busting through the the lineup of cheerleaders and all that was just it was incredible. Words cannot describe how I felt running through that hoop of paper that was made to excite the fans, and the actual deafening sound that was heard as we come out on the floor. I'll never forget that experience.
What differentiated the practice and the workouts from game day was the ability to run out the tunnel. And I think it was always exciting. I can remember my junior and senior year of the junior varsity when they were playing in front of that many people. It was exciting for them, let alone when you made the varsity team, to be able to run out of that tunnel in front of that many fans. It's just it's an experience very few high school players get an experience in their high school career, and I was very blessed that I was one of those that got to experience it.
We basically adopted basketball here, and with the Fieldhouse, you can't describe it either. It's a feeling coming through that tunnel like no other. And a good example of that is I've had guys play in the national championship game, and their greatest thrill was coming out of the tunnel here. So that kind of tells you the feeling. It almost gives me chills to say that, but that is the ultimate compliment to Newcastle community, to the school basketball program.
Well, I think to talk about why basketball is special in Newcastle, I would start with why basketball is special in Indiana. And obviously the sport, I mean, we're sitting in a place that shows how special basketball has been to our state. But as Newcastle teams had success, as great players came through, as great coaches developed great players and teams in Newcastle, I think that just added fuel to the fire of basketball was popular throughout Indiana, but Newcastle became known as an especially hotbed for basketball. And I think it's all of those things: players, coaches, community support, having a venue as large as they have had, just adds to the effect and makes basketball even more unique and special.
Yeah, I think my first memories of Trojan basketball, I think the tournament games, the sectionals, the regionals, when this place is filled up. I remember Josh Estel hitting the shot versus Batesville, running off the floor. I just remember some great teams, great players. But then I also remember the summer camps I used to come to with Coach Alford, and the access we had to players. And these guys would wrestle with us, they'd be playing basketball with us, building a connection with us. And it made you want to be a better basketball player, to be in that position someday. And I can remember just being just in awe the first time I being in here.
The concept that is a high school venue blows people away. I can remember we had a guy come from Spain. He was doing sightseeing of Indiana basketball locations and venues. He took his shoes off before he stepped on the floor because he said, this is like visiting the Mecca. I remember as well, we had two ladies from Japan who were huge Pacers fans, and they came out here, and we took them to the Fieldhouse, and they said, our professional venues in Japan aren't this big, aren't this nice. And this is a high school facility here in Indiana.
Well, I was 7 years old the first game they ever played here in November of 1959. Of course, as a 7-year-old, you don't remember specific details, but the one thing I remember vividly, walking in that door right there and coming in here when I was 7 years old, was how big the place was. That was just, as a little guy, things are big anyway. But to walk in here and see this place, that was my first impression of this building, is the size of it.
And our students were really involved when I was here. We had great peps. We would win the award from the Indianapolis TV station for the best fans when we were here. And the students, you felt always holding to them. Our pep band is beyond belief. It makes the game itself. If you get here early and you listen to them, I mean, it creates a mood that everybody wants to be involved in the game.
Crowds here that we had the temporary bleachers, and we filled the place. It was deafening when you came onto the court from the tunnel area, from the dressing room, and I can remember just the adrenaline. As soon as you ran onto the court, you just got this incredible energy about yourself, knowing that you were playing in such a great venue in front of so many fans, And yet I thank God for the opportunity to play for a great coach on great teams, and the fact that we had such great fans here in Newcastle.
What's special about the Fieldhouse is the atmosphere when it's full.
And I think a lot of people have that same impression when they come in here. It doesn't matter if they're 7 or 70. They have that same impression when they walk in that door and see this place, how big it is.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when my dad brought me here when I was in 5th grade that I had hoped, my dream was that one day I'd be good enough to just make the team, to be on the Trojan basketball team. But the hope and dream was to fill the place. It's one thing to have the largest and finest field house, but I didn't want it to be half empty. I wanted it to be full. And my junior and senior year, we were at capacity just about every home game. In fact, I can remember one weekend in particular, we had to go down the sideline with press tables my senior year, and we played Marion on a Friday night in front of 10,000 people, and then we played Indianapolis Cathedral on a Saturday night in front of 10,000 people. So very few players get to play in front of 20,000 people in their career at the high school level. I did it in a weekend, and that was a pretty special memory.
This building and the great teams and the great players and the great coaches that have been in this building, not just for Newcastle. I mean, Newcastle's had their share of great teams and great coaches and great players. We've had 20 coaches in the history of Newcastle basketball, and 8 of those 20 coaches are in the Hall of Fame, Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. We've had 14 All-Stars. We've had 2 Mr. Basketballs. We've had 1 Trester Award winner. And that's just Newcastle. But if you look back since 1959 and all the great teams and great coaches and great players that have played here, not just Newcastle, but the opponents and the other teams that have sat on the other end, on the other bench, down at the other end, I'm not sure there's a building with the probable exception of Hinkle Fieldhouse over in Indianapolis, that there's another building in this state that has had more great teams, more great coaches, more great players play in this building than right here.
This is a special place, and it's not special because, like I said, any one person did it. It's a collection of individuals. That's what makes it unique and worthwhile. Is that, you know, we have a responsibility now of the past players and coaches for us, and we take pride in that. There's a responsibility that we have, and that's how we approach each and every single day.